Back in 2013, with the release of The Wind Rises, Hayao Miyazaki announced his retirement for the 80 billionth time. For real this time. The marketing mentioned this would indeed be his swan song, but I think a lot of us still did not quite believe it would be his final film. Lo and behold, only a few years later, it was announced that Miyazaki was already working on his next animated movie at Studio Ghibli. That film is finally here, titled in English as The Boy and the Heron. Hayao Miyazaki is considered one of the best animation directors, and for good reason, so there's always an element of anticipation when his new movie hits screens. So, what do I think of his newest film? Something I admit is this is a film that I think will lend itself to multiple viewings. On the first watch, it does feel like so much is being thrown at you, and it's a lot to take in. We follow this boy whose mother's recently passed away and is taken to live in a new home while he continues to grieve and process what has happened. The beginning of the film is rather low-key for Miyazaki film, as we mostly watch Mahito around this home along with his father. Eventually, the elements characteristic of his work come in, and he is whisked off to this magical world. The rest of the movie mostly involves Mahito jumping from one place to the next, encountering all sorts of people and creatures. Miyazaki does not hold the audience's hand in introducing these concepts to us, and it's a movie that requires one to truly pay attention. With that said, his imagination absolutely comes through, and the ideas and images presented here are highly creative. My favorite aspect of the movie comes from the interactions between Mahito and the Heron. The way they are constantly at odds with each other leads to an interesting dynamic, and their team-up provides character growth for both of them. Anytime we're introduced to another fantastical being, those also leave an impression. Miyazaki has often been good at portraying cute creatures as well as more grotesque ones, and we definitely get a fair share of those here. For example, there are these little white ball things who would feel right at home in My Neighbor Totoro. There are times when the Heron looks quite disturbing, but we then learn the reason for why he looks that way. Miyazaki also includes an anti-war message, which should not be too surprising to anyone familiar with his work. We see the conflict between the various inhabitants of this world, with the parakeets most looking to make trouble and the difficulty of trying to keep everything under control. There's also a theme of grief, with Mahito struggling with how to deal with the death of his mother. Even though Miyazaki was in his 40s when his mother died, there's still a sense of him putting a lot of himself in Mahito and his desire to see his mother, who he looked up to, again. Unsurprisingly, the visuals are fantastic, especially when Miyazaki shows the animals and takes Mahito to this magical world. Around every corner, there's a new stunning image, and it's an example of how he's always experimenting with what is possible in animation. The environments have so much life and character to them, and the film also showcases his ability at creating new unique worlds. Even though his films often involve characters being transported to or existing in some magical realm, Spirited Away does not look like Howl's Moving Castle, which does not look like My Neighbor Totoro, which does not look like Ponyo, which does not look like Castle in the Sky. They have their own distinct looks specific to them and the characters who reside in them. It's one reason Miyazaki's filmography is so special and why everyone has their ones that they specifically latch onto. Another major component of his movies is the score composed by Joe Hisaishi. I cannot think of a single underwhelming score he has written, as they bring an additional life to the characters and the imaginative visuals. I would list my favorite scores, but I think I would just end up listing all the music he has contributed to Miyazaki's movies. For The Boy and the Heron, he has provided yet another beautiful piece of music, which perfectly captures the feelings felt by Mahito as he tries to navigate his emotions and this world. I should mention that the version I watched was the original Japanese track with English subtitles. Normally with Studio Ghibli movies, I'll watch the dub first and then the subtitle version, so this was an interesting experience. I'm curious to hear the version with the English language cast at some point, especially since Ghibli films often have top-notch dubs. And The Boy and the Heron is the sort of movie I'll want to revisit in the future. On this first watch, I spent a lot of time following the plot and making sense of everything that happens, so I'm sure on another viewing I'll be better prepared and become more absorbed in the film. I remember with Princess Mononoke, it took me a couple viewings to fully appreciate what the movie was doing. Nonetheless, The Boy and the Heron is an imaginative film with a lot of creative ideas and stunning imagery, and a lead protagonist one immediately grows a sympathy for as he copes with everything that happens to him. When the end credits rolled, I was surprised, as it did not feel like 2 hours had passed as we're taken to all these places. I'm happy Hayao Miyazaki has brought us another beautiful animated film, and based on comments made by the executives at Studio Ghibli, it won't be long until he gifts us with his next one.